There are places the world forgets, places left to rust and crumble, not by accident, but by design. The Echo Plant is one of those places, a Cold War facility buried in rumors and shadows. They say it was abandoned after experiments with sound and resonance went too far, unlocking forces no one could explain. Tonight we follow 4 explorers drawn into its depths. What begins as curiosity will unravel into something far more dangerous, something far beyond their control. This is the Resonance Chamber. Stay with us and prepare to uncover a truth that was never meant to be found. The Echo Plant stood like a forgotten relic, its rusted beams tangled with vines that clawed at the crumbling walls. A cold breeze swept through the skeletal structures, carrying a faint metallic scent. Alex unfolded the blueprint, their fingers brushing over the faded lines. "The entrance should be here," they said, pointing to a cluster of buildings in the distance. Their voice was steady, but a glint of urgency flickered in their eyes. Alex had led the group on countless expeditions, but this one felt different. They weren't just chasing rumors, they were chasing redemption. Years ago, Alex had abandoned an expedition after a close call. People didn't forget mistakes like that. Maya adjusted the camera strap slung over her shoulder, her expression skeptical. "Another Cold War ghost story. Classic," she muttered, zooming in on the plant's jagged outline. Maya thrived on logic and data, but tonight, even she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Jonas couldn't hide his excitement, his fingers tracing faded graffiti on a nearby wall. "The experiments here weren't just theories," he said, his voice brimming with anticipation. "Resonance frequencies that could alter perception. They were ahead of their time." Ellie lingered behind, clutching her flashlight like a lifeline. Her wide eyes darted at every sound, the distant creak of metal, the faint rustle of leaves. "This place doesn't feel right," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ellie was new to the group, and her fear wasn't just about the plant, it was about not belonging. A low groan echoed from one of the buildings, as if the plant itself were alive. Shadows stretched unnaturally long as the sun dipped below the horizon. The hidden hatch was buried beneath decades of rubble and moss. Alex knelt down, gripping the edge. With a heave, the rusted door groaned open, revealing a stairwell descending into pitch-black darkness. Alex turned to the group, their jaws set. "We stick together," they said, their voice firmer now. Maya leaned over, peering into the abyss. "Classic horror setup," she muttered, adjusting the settings on her camera. "This'll look great on the channel, though." Her dry humor masked a flicker of hesitation. Jonas clutched a small notebook, scribbling details as they prepared to descend. For him, this wasn't just an adventure. It was a chance to uncover proof of something extraordinary. Ellie hesitated at the top of the stairs, gripping the railing tightly. "Are we sure about this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The first step echoed ominously, followed by another, then another. The air grew colder as they descended, and the walls closed in around them. Maya's equipment buzzed faintly. "That's interference," she said, frowning at her monitor. "Low frequencies, maybe?" Jonas's voice carried softly from the back. "They say the plant experimented with sound, frequencies that could change how people think, even what they see." Ellie froze mid-step. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her flashlight trembling. "What?" Alex asked, turning back. A faint whisper slipped through the corridor, gone as quickly as it came. The corridor opened into a massive chamber, its scale overwhelming. The air buzzed with a faint vibration that seemed to sink into their bones. The resonance machine dominated the space, a hulking structure of rusted metal, broken panels, and coiled wires that snaked across the floor. A faint red glow pulsed from cracks in its surface, illuminating jagged carvings on the walls. Jonas stepped forward, his breath catching. "It's real," he murmured, running a hand over one of the carvings. "These symbols, they're not decoration, they're instructions or warnings." Maya crouched by the machine, adjusting her camera. Her equipment glitched momentarily, the screen displaying static before clearing. "This thing's still active," she muttered, her voice laced with disbelief. Ellie hovered near the entrance, her flashlight bouncing off the walls. "We shouldn't be here," she said, her voice tight. "This place, it's wrong." Alex stepped closer to the machine, their gaze fixed on the pulsing light. "Whatever it is, it's been waiting," they said, their tone quiet but resolute. The hum deepened and the carvings seemed to shift, their lines moving like veins under skin. Maya's fingers hovered over the control panel, brushing away layers of dust. She tapped a button, and a single light flickered to life. "Careful," Alex warned, their voice sharp. "I'm just seeing if it still works," Maya replied, though her hands trembled slightly. The light pulsed, joined by another, then another. The hum deepened, reverberating through the chamber. The carvings on the walls glowed brighter, their jagged lines pulsating in rhythm with the machine. Ellie backed away, clutching her head. "It's too loud, it's inside my head," she cried. Maya's camera burst into static, filling the room with garbled whispers. "This isn't interference," she said, her voice cracking. Jonas turned toward the carvings, his eyes wide. "They're alive," he whispered. The air thickened, pressing down on them as if the chamber itself were breathing. The chamber twisted into chaos. Ellie ran down the corridor only to find herself back at the entrance. Her flashlight flickered and she gasped as her reflection stared back at her from the concrete wall. Its lips moved, but the words didn't match her own. Jonas stood frozen, staring at a carving that had transformed into a human face. Its hollow eyes bored into his, and a whisper hissed into his mind. "Leave." Maya's camera captured fleeting shadows, distorted, jagged figures that twisted out of existence as quickly as they appeared. Alex's voice echoed, muffled and distorted. "Stick together, don't—" The words were swallowed by the hum, now deafening. The fissure split open with a deafening crack, molten red light spilling from its depths like blood from a wound. The glow consumed the chamber, illuminating every shadow and corner with an unnatural brilliance. The carvings on the walls pulsed faster, their jagged lines twisting and rippling like living veins. Symbols that once seemed inert now throbbed with energy, their meanings unreadable but unmistakably malevolent. "Shut it down!" Alex shouted, their voice barely audible over the roar of the chamber. Maya crouched by the control panel, frantically flipping switches and twisting rusted dials. "It's not responding," she cried, her hands shaking. Jonas clung to the wall, his eyes fixed on the fissure. Shapes began to rise from the molten glow, twisted, shadowy figures that seemed to warp the air around them. Their limbs were jagged, their forms constantly shifting as though they couldn't quite hold their shape. Ellie pressed herself against the far wall, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "What are those things?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "They're not things," Jonas murmured, his face pale. "They're echoes, shadows of something trying to get through." The figures grew stronger with every passing second, their hollow eyes glowing faintly. The air vibrated with an oppressive hum, a frequency so low it made their teeth ache. The fissure widened, its molten light licking at the edges of the chamber. The shadowy figures twisted upward, reaching for the carvings that pulsed above them. Alex grabbed a rusted metal rod and swung it at the control panel. Sparks flew as the machinery sputtered and groaned, its lights flickering erratically. "Get out of here!" Alex shouted, their voice hoarse. Maya hesitated, clutching her camera. "We can't leave you!" "Go!" Alex snapped, their eyes blazing. Jonas grabbed a fragment of the carvings, convinced it was a key to stopping the resonance. "This might be our only chance," he said, his voice shaking. Ellie lingered at the entrance, her eyes wide with fear. "Please come with us," she pleaded. Alex's expression softened for a moment, but their resolve held firm. "I'll hold them off. Get out before it's too late." The fissure roared as another shadowy figure emerged, its form larger and more solid than the others. Alex swung the rod again, forcing the creature back as the chamber trembled violently. Maya grabbed Ellie's arm and pulled her toward the exit. Jonas followed, clutching the carving fragment tightly. The group emerged from the underground hatch just as the facility began to collapse. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and a plume of red light shot into the sky, piercing the misty night. Jonas stumbled forward, clutching the fragment to his chest. "It's not over," he muttered, his eyes wide with dread. Ellie turned back toward the ruins, her expression hollow. "Alex," she whispered. Maya stood in silence, her camera dangling uselessly at her side. The faint hum of the resonance still echoed in the distance, carried on the cold wind. The mist thickened around them, clinging to their clothes like a living thing. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, always just out of reach. "We didn't stop it," Jonas said, his voice barely audible. "We just woke it up." The group stood at the edge of the forest, staring back at the collapsed ruins. The red glow from the fissure had faded, but the oppressive hum still lingered, faint but constant. Maya raised her camera, hesitating before turning it off. "What do we even tell people?" she asked, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Jonas didn't answer. He was staring at the fragment in his hands, its surface still glowing faintly. The carving seemed to shift under his touch, as though alive. Ellie turned to the horizon, where the mist seemed to glow faintly with an unnatural light. "I don't think we're safe," she said, her voice trembling. "The echo plant is gone, its ruins swallowed by time. But some things cannot be destroyed. The resonance chamber wasn't just an experiment, it was a doorway, and now it's open." The group walked away, but they didn't escape. Not really. The hum lingers in the wind, faint but constant, waiting for the next voice, brave or foolish enough to listen. If you've ever felt tempted to chase the unknown, remember this: not every mystery is meant to be solved, and some answers come at too high a cost. Thank you for listening to The Resonance Chamber. For more stories that leave you questioning what's real, stay tuned to the Fear Archives. Until next time, stay curious and stay cautious.